I never imagined my life would feel so hollow, like a beautiful home filled with silence, where laughter used to live. My husband, Daniel, was a man of prestige, sharp suits, sharp mind, and a schedule so tight, there was rarely space for me. His work in corporate law kept him in city after city, boardroom after boardroom, leaving me behind in a house that looked perfect from the outside but felt cold within. It wasn't always this way. When we first married, Daniel's son, Evan, was just 16. He barely spoke, and when he did, it was only out of politeness. His mother had passed the year before. Grief had carved deep lines into his young face. At first, I didn't know how to reach him. I respected his distance, understanding I was an outsider stepping into a fragile space. Still, I made sure he knew I was there, not as a replacement, but as someone willing to care. Over time, the walls between us softened. Now at 19, Evan had grown into a young man who carried himself with quiet strength. He helped around the house without being asked, spent weekends working at a nearby mechanic's shop, and often came home smelling of engine oil and determination. He reminded me of what Daniel used to be: attentive, present, and real. With Daniel away more often than not, it was Evan's company that filled the silent corners of the house. We had developed a routine, mornings spent sharing breakfast, evenings passing quietly in front of the television, exchanging stories about our day. His laughter had become the only warmth echoing through the long hallways. Still, I sensed a shift in the air. Not a storm, not a disaster, just tension. Unspoken, undefined, but tangible. There were moments, fleeting, charged, when I caught Evan looking at me, his eyes lingering a second too long. And I didn't look away. I told myself it was nothing. A bond born from shared loneliness. But even as I said it, I felt the lie curl in my throat. This house, once so sterile and orderly, now felt electric with possibility and danger. Daniel had left again this morning, another trip, another conference. He kissed me on the cheek like a stranger, barely registering my presence before vanishing out the door, leaving his absence to settle like dust. And so I stood at the kitchen sink, watching Evan in the backyard, shirt clinging to his back as he repaired the garden fence. The sunlight caught in his hair, and for a moment, I forgot to breathe. That was when I realized something had changed, not just in the house, but within me. I was no longer sure where duty ended and desire began. But I knew one thing: the longer Daniel stayed away, the harder it became to draw that line, and some lines, once crossed, can never be redrawn. The house felt quieter that evening, though I wasn't sure why. Maybe it was the way the clock ticked louder than usual, or how the air seemed thicker, heavier. I moved through the kitchen on autopilot, setting 2 plates instead of 3, my hands working while my thoughts drifted elsewhere, mainly to Evan. He came in from the yard just as the sun dipped low, casting golden light across his face. There was a smear of dirt on his cheek, his shirt clinging to his chest from sweat, and something about the simplicity of it, his raw, unfiltered presence, made my breath catch. He smiled when he saw the table set. "Smells good," he said, wiping his hands with a towel before sitting down. "Your favorite, chicken parmesan," I replied, avoiding his eyes. "Thought you deserved something nice after all that work outside." He looked surprised, touched even. "You didn't have to go through the trouble." "I wanted to," I said softly. Dinner passed with easy conversation. He told me about the car he was fixing at the shop, a 1972 Mustang, and how he was saving to buy one of his own. I listened, genuinely interested, and somewhere between his laughter and my smiles, I realized how easy it had become to be around him. Natural even. But beneath the surface, there was a current, an unspoken electricity, that neither of us acknowledged. After the dishes were cleared, we found ourselves on the couch, a movie playing in the background, forgotten. The room was dim, lit only by the soft glow of the screen. He sat closer than usual, not enough to alarm, but enough to notice. I could feel the heat radiating from him, the faint scent of soap and summer air. As the movie droned on, he spoke suddenly, his voice quieter than before. "You're different when he's gone," he said, eyes fixed on the screen. I tensed. "Different how?" "Lighter. Like you can actually breathe." I didn't know what to say. His words hit too close. I forced a smile, hoping to brush it off, but he turned toward me, his eyes searching. "You don't have to pretend around me," he said, almost in a whisper. "I see it. The way he leaves, the way you wait for him to notice you. But he doesn't." Something in me cracked then, not enough to break, but enough to let the truth in. I wanted to deny it, to scold him for stepping over a line, but instead, I looked at him, and didn't look away. We sat there, suspended in silence, the air between us thick with everything unsaid. No words, no touch. Just the weight of what we both felt but couldn't admit. "Not yet." I stood abruptly, my voice barely steady. "I'm going to bed." "Good night, Evan." He nodded, watching me, but said nothing. As I climbed the stairs, heart racing, I realized something terrifying. I didn't want Daniel to come back. Not because I didn't love him, but because someone else had made me feel alive, and that was a betrayal I could no longer ignore. Coffee with Alex wasn't just coffee. It was an escape. A reprieve from the quiet decay of my relationship with Jamie, a flicker of warmth in a life that had gone cold. We met at a small cafe on the edge of downtown, tucked away from the bustle. Alex was already there, 2 cups in hand, offering one with a grin that felt both effortless and intentional. Thought you could use something strong, they said, I scanning mine as if trying to read what I wouldn't dare say out loud. We talked about everything and nothing. Work, music, childhood dreams we'd long given up on. Alex listened, not distractedly, not out of politeness but engaged, leaning in, laughing at the right moments, asking questions that made me feel interesting again. Valuable. It had been months since I felt like someone wanted to know me beyond surface-level routine. When the conversation shifted to relationships, I hesitated, choosing my words like fragile glass. Jamie's busy. We've both been under pressure lately. It wasn't a lie, but it wasn't the whole truth either. Alex didn't press. They just nodded, sipping their drink, I steady on mine. Sometimes we just need a reminder that we deserve to be happy too. That sentence sat heavy in my chest long after the coffee was gone. After that night, things shifted. Subtly, then all at once. Alex and I started messaging regularly, inside jokes, late-night check-ins, flirty banter hidden beneath layers of plausible deniability. I told myself it was harmless. Just attention I wasn't getting at home, but the lies began. Small at first, saying I was staying late at work when I wasn't, hiding my phone screen when Jamie walked by. I caught myself smiling at Alex's texts, feeling a jolt of anticipation every time my phone buzzed. With Jamie, silence stretched longer. Even when we were in the same room, we felt miles apart. One afternoon, as I was leaving the office, Alex caught up with me. Hey, movie night at my place Friday. Just a couple people from work. You should come. Their eyes lingered on mine, holding just enough suggestion to make my heart race. I nodded before I could think. Sure, sounds fun. That night, at home, Jamie barely looked up when I told them I'd be out Friday. Okay, they murmured, already lost in emails, fingers tapping away. Not a question. Not a glance. I watched Jamie from across the room, someone I once shared everything with, now a stranger behind a screen, and felt a pang of something I couldn't quite name. Sadness? Resentment? Or maybe the first crack of justification forming in my mind. Friday loomed like a cliff edge, and I was already walking toward it, and somewhere deep inside, I wasn't sure I wanted to stop.